Welcome to the deep dive.
Hey, one.
Before we really get into the weeds today, do us a massive favor. Hit those like and subscribe buttons right now.
Yeah, please do. It really helps.
It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these incredibly thorough, no stones left unturned explorations into some of the most provocative source materials out there.
And today's material is, well, it's definitely provocative.
Oh, absolutely. We have a very specific and highly requested mission today. We are reviewing a really incisive, ultra-long new ebook.
It's called Misandrist Ideologies.
Right, or you might know it by its subtitle, which is Heavily Used Online Critical Theories, Luxury Beliefs of Satanic Leftists.
Yeah.
And it's written by Conrad Reicher.
That is exactly what we're unpacking today. Yeah. And I just want to speak directly to you, the listener, for a second.
Mm-hmm.
If you are someone who has been seeking to genuinely understand the red pill, the men's rights, and just the broader manosphere perspective on modern culture, this deep dive is custom tailored specifically for you. If you want to really hook into this worldview or just read the source material yourself, you need to check out Amazon, Kindle, and Google Play Books to buy the book. It is a massive volume.
Yeah, it's huge.
And you should also definitely go follow the author at Conrad Reicher on Substack. That's at CONRADNRIKER on Substack for his ongoing writings.
Absolutely. So our goal today is to provide a fascinating, extensive exploration into how, according to Reicher's framework, our foundational institutions were historically captured by what he explicitly describes as feminists and Marxists.
Right.
And I truly cannot stress this enough before we start, we need to establish the rules of engagement here.
The disclaimer.
Yes, the critical disclaimer for you listening. Mm-hmm. This source material contains highly politically charged right-wing and red pill content.
Very much so.
We, as your hosts, are taking absolutely no sides today. We aren't endorsing the author's viewpoints, and we aren't condemning them either.
That's the baseline. Our sole mission is to act as your impartial guides. We're just here to objectively unpack Reicher's arguments.
Test the engine, basically.
Exactly. Look at his syllogisms, map out his historical claims, and just see how the logic of this book runs. We want to help you fully understand the architecture of these arguments.
Think of us as cartographers.
Right. We're mapping out this highly controversial terrain for you, but we are not telling you where to build your house.
I love that analogy. So, to set the stage, let's start with Reicher's foundational premise. The whole book hinges on this concept of luxury beliefs.
Which is actually a term he borrows from Rob Henderson, the social commentator.
Right, but Reicher takes it in a very specific structural direction. His overarching argument is that modern progressive ideologies like modern feminism and critical theory, they don't just exist in a vacuum.
No, they require a massive subsidy.
Exactly. They can only exist because they are heavily subsidized by the physical safety, the hard infrastructure, and the surplus resources generated almost entirely by traditional patriarchal male labor.
It's a really striking premise.
Yeah.
To help you visualize this, Reicher contrasts two very different images right at the beginning.
The ironworkers.
Yeah, the 1930s ironworkers, the roughnecks, mostly Mohawk and Irish immigrants. He paints this super vivid picture of these men dangling from steel cables 1,000 feet above Manhattan.
Building the Empire State Building.
Right, in just 13 months. Mostly without safety harnesses, freezing winds, blistering heat. It's an environment of extreme lethal physical risk.
Driven by what he calls masculine aggression and engineering brilliance.
Exactly. And then he violently contrasts that image with a modern archetype.
The gender studies graduate.
Right. He asks you to imagine a modern progressive graduate walking into the plush marble lobby of that exact same building today.
Totally insulated from the elements.
Kept perfectly comfortable by climate-controlled engineering. And yet they take to social media to complain that the office air conditioning is sexist because it was historically calibrated for male metabolic rates.
The contrast is completely intentional and jarring. And he uses this to introduce what he terms the syllogism of male utility.
Yeah, let's break that down. A syllogism is just deductive reasoning.
Step 1. Men build civilization through dangerous, back-breaking physical labor.
Step 2. That completed civilization enables extreme comfort and safety.
Step 3. That profound comfort creates a luxurious environment where feminism can safely emerge.
Step 4. Feminism then actively seeks to dismantle, shame, and destroy the traditional men who built that system.
And the final conclusion, destroying those men, ultimately destroys the civilization itself, because the power grid, the sewers, the roads, they still rely entirely on that ongoing male physical sacrifice.
Right, he pauses on that to really hit the modern debate between equity and equality of opportunity.
Because standard equality of opportunity just means a fair starting line based on merit.
You take the test, best score gets the job.
But Riker argues that equity, which is the buzzword for modern progressivism, demands equal outcomes regardless of input, regardless of biology.
And to prove that equity is hypocritical, he points to what he calls the glass cellar,
This was a fascinating rhetorical flip. We all know the glass ceiling.
the invisible barrier keeping women out of boardrooms.
Right. But Riker argues progressives completely ignore the glass cellar. He pulls Bureau of Labor Statistics data from 2022.
Showing that men make up roughly 91 to 93% of all workplace fatalities.
Staggering.
It really is. Roofers, deep-sea fishermen, loggers, sanitation workers.
High voltage linemen. And Riker points out you never see protests demanding 50% female representation in sewer maintenance crews.
Or frontline infantry combat. He views the demand for equity as a demand to artificially redistribute the financial rewards of male utility without ever volunteering to share the lethal physical burdens.
And it's not just blue-collar labor. He brings this into the corporate world with the Bezos paradox.
Oh, the Amazon example.
Yeah, Riker argues Jeff Bezos built Amazon through ruthless, aggressive, hyper-competitive risk-taking.
Traits Riker explicitly defines as deeply patriarchal.
Right. But the paradox is that the massive profits generated by that raw masculine aggression are now funneled into DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives.
And those initiatives, according to Riker, actively demonize the exact same aggressive traits that built the Treasury in the first place.
A civilization essentially eating its own foundational pillars.
Which brings us to the broader historical canvas, the tearing up of the social contract between the sexes.
The Birkenhead drill.
Yes. 1852, the HMS Birkenhead is sinking off South Africa. Not enough lifeboats. The soldiers aboard stand in strict military formation on the deck, facing certain death in shark-infested waters.
Specifically to ensure the women and children could escape.
Women and children first. Riker calls this the ultimate manifestation of chivalry, accepting absolute male expendability to protect the vulnerable.
But then he fast forwards to 2012, the Costa Concordia disaster,
Off the coast of Italy.
where the captain, Francesco Scatino, infamously tripped and fell into a lifeboat, leaving hundreds trapped.
Reports of men pushing past women.
Riker uses this to argue the chivalric code has completely collapsed, and he asks why.
His answer is that society has spent decades treating the male protector role as toxic or inherently oppressive.
You can't systematically strip men of respect and authority and then act shocked when they refuse to lay down their lives on a sinking ship.
Brutal logic.
Oh,
But it begs a massive question. Riker doesn't think this shift just happened organically.
no. He traces a direct intellectual genealogy of woke ideology straight back to the Frankfurt School in the early 20th century.
Right into the historical weeds.
How does an esoteric group of German intellectuals connect to modern gender politics? He points to Max Horkheimer and his 1937 essay on critical theory.
So for the listener, Riker breaks it down like this. Traditional theory is the scientific method, mapping objective reality.
But critical theory, Horkheimer changed the game. Riker says critical theory doesn't care about objective truth. Its stated goal is to analyze power dynamics to liberate people from Western structural norms.
It's not a magnifying glass, it's a sledgehammer designed for demolition.
And to swing that sledgehammer, he pairs Horkheimer with Antonio Gramsci.
The Italian Marxist writing from a fascist prison in the 20s and 30s.
Gramsci realized a massive problem for Marxists. Violent economic uprisings weren't happening in the West.
Because the working class was getting wealthy under capitalism, buying cars and radios.
So Gramsci proposed the Long March through the institutions.
A deliberate, patient strategy. Don't violently revolt. Quietly capture the cultural organs that produce Western values.
The universities, media, entertainment, they didn't storm the beaches, they got academic tenure.
Exactly. But how does capturing institutions for economic Marxism connect to identity politics?
That's the pivot. When economic arguments fail to resonate with a prosperous middle class, Riker says the left cynically changed the axis of the conflict.
They replaced factory owner versus factory worker with a framework based entirely on immutable identity traits, race and gender.
The patriarchy oppressing women.
Right. Riker argues this was a masterstroke because it ensured a perpetual cycle of grievance.
Because if it's about wages, you negotiate a raise and it's over. But if it's about cultural identity and historical grievance...
The revolution becomes permanent. No amount of legal equality can solve it.
Which brings us to Herbert Marcuse, the 1965 essay, Repressive Tolerance. This felt like Riker's blueprint for modern cancel culture.
Marcuse was trying to solve a problem. How do you suppress political enemies in a society that values free speech?
Repressive tolerance.
He argued that standard tolerance just reinforces the oppressive status quo. So to be truly tolerant, you must be actively intolerant of right-wing movements and conservative ideas.
Intolerance becomes a moral virtue.
Riker calls it newspeak incarnate. Silencing opponents is reframed as an act of profound morality.
And he gives a visceral modern example, the 2017 incident at Evergreen State College with Professor Brett Weinstein.
A massive flashpoint. Evergreen had a day of absence where minority students historically left campus to highlight their contributions.
But in 2017, they flipped it and asked white students and faculty to leave.
Brett Weinstein, a progressive biology professor, objected. He said taking yourself out voluntarily is a protest, but forcing a group to leave based on race is oppression.
And the response was a mob of students cornering him, shouting him down. The campus police chief was told to stand down.
He had to hold his classes in a public park.
Riker views this as the direct, practical application of critical theory and Paulo Freire's pedagogy of the oppressed. Objective education substituted with victimhood worship and mob rule.
He also brings in Theodore Adorno's The Authoritarian Personality from 1950.
Riker claims Adorno attempted to pathologize the traditional nuclear family, suggesting strict father figures were the precursors to fascism.
A deliberate psychological attack to sever the transmission of patriarchal values from father to son, raising men who are deeply ashamed of their innate strength.
So if patriarchal structures were dismantled in universities, where does it go next?
Elementary schools.
Right. Segment 3, the war on boys. Riker calls it the taming of the stag.
Here, his evolutionary psychology starts blending with his institutional critique. He argues K-12 schools are feminized environments designed to punish natural male biology.
Citing David Buss, the evolutionary psychologist, the male brain is wired for kinesthetic engagement.
Movement, rough and tumble play, spatial navigation.
But the modern classroom demands docility, sitting still for 8 hours, emotional regulation.
Traits more naturally aligned with feminine development. He brings up the reading wars to prove this systemic bias.
Phonics versus whole language.
Historically, phonics is a highly structured decoding system. It appeals to male systems thinking.
But the shift to whole language relies on emotional immersion and context guessing.
Riker views this as deliberate sabotage, leaving boys falling massively behind.
And when boys naturally rebel, they get medically suppressed.
The Ritalin genocide.
It's one of his most controversial claims. He points to CDC data showing a 40% increase in ADHD diagnoses between 2003 and 2011.
Overwhelmingly skewing toward boys. Riker views this as the pharmaceutical neutering of boys. They aren't treating a pathology, they're treating masculinity as a pathology.
Subduing them to be manageable in a compliance system. And he backs this with that 2013 PNAS study on grading bias.
Oh, the math and science tests.
Yeah. When teachers knew the gender of the student, girls consistently outscored boys. But when graded completely anonymously,
The boys scored higher.
Riker uses this as empirical proof of institutionalized misandry. Female teachers actively grading down boys for exhibiting male behavioral styles.
And he highlights the absurdity with the Pop-Tart anecdote.
The 7-year-old boy in Maryland suspended for biting a strawberry pop-tart into the shape of a gun.
Pointed it at the ceiling and said, bang, bang. Zero tolerance policies treating evolutionary boyhood play as criminal, toxic masculinity.
So where does this pipeline lead? Riker says right into the jaws of the $1.7 trillion student debt crisis.
He calls the modern university a financial scam and indentured servitude.
Pressuring young men into non-dischargeable debt to fund Marxist indoctrination centers, teaching them they're the source of historical evil.
So what's his solution?
The red pill praxa.
Skip traditional four-year college entirely. Avoid the debt trap. Learn high-income blue-collar skills like advanced welding or HVAC.
Or highly scalable digital skills. Coding, high-ticket sales. Build a parallel tribal network outside the academic priesthood.
But what if a man does enter the corporate world?
That brings us to segment 4, the internal Stasi.
Modern HR departments. Riker compares them directly to the East German secret police.
Monitoring internal speech, enforcing ideological purity, prioritizing emotional comfort over profit.
And this introduces the competence paradox, the traits that actually drive innovation and revenue assertiveness, risk-taking, obsessive focus.
Riker says those are biologically male typical traits, but HR and DEI classify them as toxic or domineering.
The paradox is that the massive HR bureaucracy relies entirely on the surplus revenue generated by the masculine competence it punishes.
He illustrates this with the anecdote of Mark, the senior back-end engineer.
Right. Mark spots a critical flaw, a race condition before a big launch. Tries to urgently explain it to the project manager.
But she's a recent diversity hire with zero technical background, feels threatened by his tone, and files an HR complaint for mansplaining.
In creating a hostile work environment, Mark backs down to save his career. The flawed code launches.
System crashes, cost the company $4 million, and Mark is quietly fired later anyway for poor cultural fit.
Riker uses this to say, when you prioritize psychological safety over objective reality, structural collapse is inevitable.
But why would a profit-driven company do this? Riker traces the legal foundation to Griggs versus Duke Power Company, 1971.
Disparate impact theory.
This is vital to his thesis. The court ruled that even if a test is entirely neutral, like a math requirement, if it results in disproportionate outcomes among demographic groups, it is legally discriminatory.
Making raw objective competence illegal if it doesn't yield equal demographic outcomes.
Companies are terrified of class action lawsuits, so they force racial and gender quotas by proxy.
Penalizing high-performing men to make the demographic spreadsheet look right.
He also targets asset managers like BlackRock and Vanguard.
The ESG scores. Environmental, social, and governance metrics.
Trillion-dollar asset managers acting like a cartel. If a company refuses diversity quotas, BlackRock lowers their ESG score.
Starving them of capital and forcing compliance through financial extortion.
He uses the 2017 James Damore memo at Google as proof.
Damore cited mainstream evolutionary psychology to suggest the gender gap in tech might be due to biological differences in interest. Men liking systems, women liking people.
He cited the scientific consensus and was immediately publicly smeared and fired.
Riker contrasts this obsessive need for agreeableness with the fall of Nokia. Nokia lost the smartphone war because its culture became too feminine and consensus-driven.
Couldn't compete with the ruthless, entirely masculine drive of Steve Jobs at Apple.
Which pivots us perfectly into segment 5. Evolutionary psychology, hypergamy, and the sexual marketplace.
Going all the way back to A.J. Bateman's 1948 fruit fly experiments.
Because fruit flies reproduce incredibly fast, Bateman found male fruit flies gained massive reproductive advantage by mating with as many females as possible.
But the females gained absolutely zero advantage from multiple males. One was enough.
Riker connects this to Robert Schreiber's 1972 theory of parental investment, the biological math underpinning Riker's entire gender view.
The sex that invests the most biological resources into offspring will naturally be the choosiest.
Women bear the immense biological cost of gestation. They are hardwired to be incredibly selective.
While men, whose investment can be minimal, are wired to aggressively compete for those selective females.
And Riker uses this to argue male ambition and risk-taking aren't toxic social constructs. They are primal evolutionary imperatives.
If you didn't compete, you didn't reproduce.
This leads to the paradox of toxicity, or the gynocentric double bind.
Modern feminism demands men be submissive, vulnerable, emotionally open.
But Riker argues women are still biologically hardwired from the Pleistocene era to desire dominant, stoic, capable men.
So if a man obeys the modern mandate to be vulnerable and weak, Riker says he instantly becomes sexually invisible.
His phrasing is brutal. Vulnerability is just weakness in a pretty dress. Expose your throat and you get primal contempt, not empathy.
To prove this selectivity is operating today, he looks at digital dating apps. The Pareto principle on Tinder and OkCupid.
The 80-20 rule. Data suggests 80% of women compete fiercely for the top 20% of men.
The tallest, wealthiest, most attractive, and they rate the mathematically average man as below average. Baseline shifted wildly. This proves female hypergamy.
The biological drive to mate across and up the socioeconomic hierarchy.
And when hypergamy collides with feminist ideology, you get a fractured marketplace. The good man versus the nice guy.
Or the simp.
The good man is highly competent, stoic, mission-focused. The nice guy employs transactional agreeableness.
Agreeing with everything, hoping to trade submission for sexual access.
Because institutions attack the stoic good man, the market is flooded with simps, proved by the exploding OnlyFans economy.
Millions of men paying thousands a month for digital validation. Riker calls them emotional tampons.
Absorbing emotional labor and providing resources without ever gaining intimacy or respect.
He also introduces the alpha widow concept. If a young woman mates with top-tier alpha males during peak fertility, she develops deep physiological benchmarks.
So when she's in her 30s and those men won't commit, she finds it impossible to pair bond with a stable provider male.
Chronic dissatisfaction, comparing the average husband to her past.
And the Satoshi Tajiri effect, the creator of Pokemon.
An obsessive, neurodivergent guy mocked by women his whole life until he achieved massive global wealth and status.
Proving an asymmetry. Male sexual leverage is painstakingly built over decades. Female sexual leverage is innate, peaking early with youth.
If we connect these biological dynamics to legal marriage, we hit segment 6, the gavel of bias, divorce, and family court.
Riker traces the dismantling of the nuclear family to Ronald Reagan. 1969 Family Law Act in California, the first no-fault divorce laws.
Riker absolutely despises it, calls it divorce.
He lays out the syllogism of the scam. Premise 1. A valid contract requires mutual consent to dissolve, or proof of breach.
Premise 2. No-fault divorce allows unilateral dissolution at any time without penalty to the person breaking it.
Therefore, modern marriage isn't a valid contract. He calls it a hostage situation where the state holds the gun.
The mechanics are crucial here. Title 5ED of the Social Security Act.
This one blew my mind. The state acting as a surrogate husband.
Basically, Title 5ED provides massive federal matching funds to states based on how much child support they collect.
Creating a perverse incentive for family courts to maximize child support orders, extracting wealth from productive men to subsidize single mothers.
Riker says this removes the financial risk of female hypergamy. A woman initiates divorce, the state guarantees a severance package funded by the ex-husband's future labor.
Backed by the threat of prison, he goes scorched earth on the deadbeat dad narrative.
High male income isn't viewed as a reward for competence. It's a reservoir waiting to be drained. A bounty on his own head.
He uses the Frank and Jamie McCourt divorce, the former Dodgers owners.
The courts focused heavily on lifestyle maintenance for the ex-wife, treating Frank's future earnings as her ongoing property.
But he also brings it to the middle class with Dave, the software engineer.
Worked grueling 80-hour weeks to pay for his wife's medical school.
She becomes a doctor, files for no-fault divorce, and strategically works part-time during proceedings, so the judge orders Dave to pay her massive alimony based on his tech salary.
Legalized betrayal, punishing male sacrifice, while subsidizing lack of loyalty.
So what are men doing? MGTOW, men going their own way.
Riker vehemently defends it. It isn't hate or misogyny. It's a rational, mathematical cost-benefit analysis.
The risk of divorce, theft, and ruin is so high, men are going on a quiet labor strike against marriage.
He even defends the Mike Pence rule.
Refusing to dine alone with a woman other than his wife, mocked as a Puritan.
But Riker says it's logical risk management in a litigious environment where one uncorroborated accusation destroys your life.
This mass withdrawal leads to segment 7, antinatalism, gender fluidity, and civilizational decline.
The void of the cradle. Total fertility rate plummeting to 1.6, well below the 2.1 replacement rate.
Riker views it as civilizational suicide, and he attacks the green anti-human lie.
The idea that having fewer kids is a moral good because humans are a plague.
The ultimate luxury belief. Only a society completely insulated from survival struggles could entertain the nihilistic idea that ceasing to exist is a virtue.
He targets the D&K lifestyle specifically. Double income, no kids.
Celebrated on TikTok, but Riker calls them economic parasites.
Because they consume the roads, power grids, and medical innovations built by previous generations, but refuse to produce the human capital to maintain them.
Modern welfare states like Social Security are literally demographic Ponzi schemes, relying on a massive base of young workers to pay for the top.
Without children to tax, mathematical collapse is guaranteed.
And the breakdown of reality continues with transgender ideology. Riker calls gender fluidity the absolute pinnacle of luxury beliefs.
Demanding a total denial of objective, material biology in favor of subjective internal feelings.
He cites Dr. Lisa Littman's research on ROGD, rapid onset gender dysphoria.
The historic spike in teenage girls identifying as trans isn't an organic medical phenomenon, it's a social contagion.
A maladaptive coping mechanism for puberty amplified by algorithms.
Philosophically, Riker links this to Gnostic dualism, the ancient heresy believing the physical body is evil and the true self is a spirit trapped inside.
Secular Gnosticism. Chemically altering a healthy body to match a subjective mental state is a medical catastrophe.
Anchored by the tragic John Jones case. David Reimer.
Botched circumcision in the 60s. Psychologist John Money convinced the parents to reassign his sex to female, raise him as Brenda.
An experiment to prove the blank slate theory. Catastrophic failure. Reimer suffered agonizing trauma, transitioned back, and tragically committed suicide.
Riker argues this proves gender is biologically hardwired, treating it as a social construct as child abuse.
And culturally, this erases Title IX's protections for women, biological males dominating women's sports.
Watching a male with superior lung capacity and skeletal structure win gold, while females get pushed to silver and bronze, erasing women from their own spaces.
He uses the Shakers as a dark metaphor, the 18th century religious group known for furniture making.
But they believed in absolute celibacy, relied entirely on converts, so they went extinct.
Riker argues the modern West has adopted an ideology so detached from procreation, it's walking the same path to extinction.
Which brings us to the final part, segment 8, the historical necessity of patriarchy and the new patriarch.
Having diagnosed the disease, here is his historical cure, and he completely rejects the peaceful prehistoric matriarchy myth.
Pointing to the Masuo people of China, a heavily cited matrilineal society.
Riker notes they are peaceful, but they remained in the Stone Age. No skyscrapers, no symphonies.
Whenever you see complex civilization, written law, monumental architecture, you are looking exclusively at the results of a patriarchal hierarchy.
He references Steven Pinker's patriarchal bargain. Western civilization succeeded because socially mandated monogamy ensured the average man had a stake in the system,
Lowering the violent primal competition seen in polygamous societies.
allowing the average man to redirect his aggressive energy from fighting other men for a wife into building cathedrals and inventing the steam engine.
Looking back to the Roman paterfamilias, the male head of household holding absolute legal power.
Viewed today as barbaric, but Riker argues it was a necessary mechanism to ensure paternity certainty.
Because before DNA testing, the only way a man could be certain a child was his was through strict control of female sexuality.
And without that ironclad guarantee, no man would voluntarily invest decades of grueling labor into the agrarian revolution, clearing wilderness to accumulate generational capital.
Paternity certainty is the prerequisite for civilization. He even debunks the Viking shield maiden narrative.
Brave BJ 581 in Sweden, found with weapons. Media claimed it proved women fought as elite warriors.
But subsequent DNA analysis confirmed the skeleton was definitively male.
Riker accuses academia of her storied revisionism, prioritizing feminist wish fulfillment over objective truth.
Superior upper body strength and testosterone made men the combatants throughout history.
So what's Riker's roadmap for a man today? He doesn't say try to change the system. It's too far gone.
He points to the manosphere as the modern digital agora, the last unpoliced town square where men can speak objective truths about hypergamy without being canceled by HR.
And physical networks like the men's shed movement from Australia. Spaces where men bond shoulder to shoulder building things.
A kinesthetic antidote to the feminized therapy couch that forces men to sit face to face analyzing feelings.
He provides a template. Compliance variant 52,000.
A real HR manager who woke up to the corporate matrix, realized he was enforcing an ideology he despised.
Executed a hard exit, liquidated his 401k, left the progressive city, bought rural land, and started a hard asset concrete pouring business.
Total personal and financial sovereignty outside the fiat currency system, answering only to the laws of physics and the free market.
Riker outlines 5 pillars for the new patriarch based on this. First, physical strength.
Citing empirical links between upper body strength and traditional political views.
Second, stoic resilience. Rejecting the trap of male vulnerability, remaining indifferent to online outrage.
Third, intellectual rigor. Reading the great books, self-educating outside the corrupted university system.
Fourth, patriarchal leadership, defined not as tyranny, but as burden-bearing, absorbing the chaos and danger so his family lives in peace behind his walls.
And fifth, the shield of civilization, the tactical application, achieving financial sovereignty through unconfiscatable hard assets, specifically Bitcoin.
And utilizing geographic arbitrage, moving capital and family to jurisdictions that respect your rights, escaping the corporate rat race entirely.
Incredible ground covered today, mapping out Riker's highly detailed worldview. And I want to leave you, the listener, with a final provocative thought that builds directly on this geographic arbitrage idea.
It's a deep one.
Think about this thought experiment. If this movement of competent men withdrawing their labor their marriage prospects, and their capital from the mainstream system continues to grow, will we eventually see a complete societal bifurcation?
A profoundly sci-fi thought. Imagine a near future where two entirely distinct civilizations occupy the exact same physical geography.
On one side, the mainstream society relying on a fiat-based system driven by luxury beliefs and DEI bureaucracy.
And on the other side, moving quietly beneath the surface, a totally separate, decentralized, hard asset parallel economy.
Built and funded by men who have completely withdrawn their consent, taxes, and participation from the mainstream matrix.
The ultimate question Riker's book forces us to ask is what happens to the former society when it finally, inevitably, runs out of the latter's money and physical labor?
It is definitely something deep to mull over, regardless of where you stand on these issues. Thank you for diving into the deep end with us today.
Really appreciate you sticking with it.
Please remember, hit that like button right now and subscribe to the channel so you never miss one of our extensive explorations. If you want to dive into the massive source material we mapped out today, check out Amazon Kindle and Google Playbooks to buy Conrad Riker's Misandrist Ideologies.
And you can also follow the author directly at Conrad Riker on Substack for more of his work. Once again, we are simply your impartial guides, mapping out the contours of this highly debated terrain so you can truly understand the arguments actively shaping the culture wars.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you in the next deep dive.